I'm your host, Felipe Rose, and welcome to the Disco Chronicles and Beyond. This podcast is about the disco era, the music, the culture, and the impact it's had on the world today, and why disco is still so hot. After successfully touring the world for over 4 decades as one of the original co-founders and members of the world-famous Village People, selling over 100 million records, this disco king truly knows a thing or two about the disco era. So sit back and relax and enjoy my conversation with my guest today. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world and whatever time you get up. Welcome to another episode of the Disco Chronicles. I'm your host, Felipe Rose. Well, where do I begin? Last Friday, March 31st, I performed at the Brooklyn Bowl in Brooklyn, New York. And that's where I'm from, Brooklyn. And yes, I'm out on the road touring again. Let me tell you, 850 disco lovers. It was sold out. They loved every second of it and they gave it back to me as I gave it right back to them, ending and thrilling them with the proper way to spell YMCA. I want to thank Brooklyn Bowl and Gimme Gimme Disco. For more information on their parties and their concerts, go to GimmeGimmeDisco.com. On the show today, Ray Pinky Velasquez is a Latin American sound producer, mixer, and remixer. Velasquez is the co-founder of Legends of Vinyl and is known for tracks including South Central, Disco Not Disco 2, Twilight 22, and Savage Lover. He was the A&R man and disco consultant for the Vanguard Records dance music department. He is currently the founder of Pinky Pack Productions. Please welcome to the show, everyone, Ray Pinky Velasquez. To the Disco Chronicles and Beyond, Mr. Ray Pinky Velasquez. Oh my God! I thought I was gonna have to fly in, drive upstate, do this interview with you, and go like, because so many gremlins trying to like not make this thing happen, you know. But I want to thank you and on behalf of like all the listeners and the people watching that subscribe, I want to thank you for really giving us the first barrage of guests for season, pretty much all of season 2 into almost into 3. And ladies and gentlemen, don't ask Ray Pinky Velasquez. Don't ever ask him for anything because he doesn't deliver. He doesn't deliver just like one thing. He'll send you a plethora or a gaggle of guests. And so you can't book. You can't book.
Variety. Variety is the
No, it's not variety. You gotta because this is a weekly show. I have to book everyone out like months ahead, and things happen. People, you know, people are here and gone today, here today, gone tomorrow. But schedules change, and then schedules, and then get all tricky. But listen, so welcome to the Disco Chronicles, and basically, your work, I found out afterwards through Steve Thompson, Ray Caviano, Marcus Berry from AMG. The amount of work that you did when you were at Vanguard. But let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
Tell our listeners, like, how did you come up in the industry, in the business?
Well, Felipe, I think the inception is my love for music. When I was a little boy, a little kid, I would listen to the Beatles. I would listen to WABC radio and really get inspired by melody. When you think of Elton John, when you think of Motown, when you think of all of those great old songs, one thing that they all have, even if they're in a different category of music, is a good melody, a good feeling to capture the human spirit. And music has always done that for me. It has inspired me. There's something my father plays a guitar.
Well, that's where I was going to get to. I was going to get into the music. You, like me, you have music growing up because your parents are Puerto Rican. You're from Puerto
Yes.
Rico.
Yes.
So there had to have been a lot of melody, a lot of songs in your
Right.
home while you were growing up.
Absolutely. Spanish songs.
Your
Cuban,
father played?
Old Cuban songs.
Your father play guitar? Did he play guitar?
Yes, he played a acoustic guitar, plays it very well. He can't play it now, he's so old, but you know, he was very good, very talented. He was asked to play guitar in a movie, in a Spanish movie, when he was young. So he's that talented. I can't play an instrument. I can't, you know, I don't want to play an instrument, you know, but I can hear things in my mind, you know, and I can go into the studio and get an engineer like Mark Berry, like you mentioned before.
Yes.
You know, working with Mark, very talented. If I hear something, if I hear a piano that I would like on a record, we would put it on there, test it, take it out if it didn't feel right. But creatively, I hear things to get more of the melody into the picture of what I'm.
How did you become? How did you become? Did you become a remixer or you weren't a DJ, right?
Yes, I was a DJ.
And then that started you on the path to becoming a remixer, mixer, producer.
Exactly. In other words, there was always something more to what I wanted to do, to what I felt I could do. If I was a DJ and everybody was playing records and there was a lot of great DJs, you know about them, you know about Nicky Ciano, Larry Levan, you know.
He talked you up. He talked you up. But in a good way. No, but in a good way, because I mean the thing is that unlike me, I mean, if I had probably I could have maybe one day if I switched careers, instead of going with Village People, I probably would have been a DJ. I was so close to it. Like all you guys, we're all about the same age. We were all coming up in New York. I just thank God for that. I think that the knowledge and the things that we did and the music that we all put together and created just stands the test of time. You became the A&R man and as a disco consultant in Vanguard Records. Now, how did that happen?
I was a member of Eddie Rivera's record pool, IDRC, like you mentioned in the last interview that we had. IDRC and Eddie Rivera.
It was very important in New York to have the record pool because they had the records and the means to give it out to the DJs. The DJs would buy it, and then they had the latest mix to play in the clubs.
Right, exactly. So initially I started at David Mancuso's record pool at the Loft. And when Eddie Rivera, and keep in mind, Eddie Rivera was part of that record pool with David Mancuso. Well, at some point, Eddie felt that he can start his own pool with a Latin following of DJs as the nucleus to start.
It was predominantly from the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island. It was more of the la gente. When I say la gente, the urban community of Blacks and Hispanics that really then that went into the Eddie's record pool that you were.
Exactly, very true. And and so we had other members come in. We had Tom Savarese come into Eddie's pool. Walter Gibbons was a part of the pool. But the nucleus, the main part was
but these guys, they were Black boys, and when they thought music and how they lived and thought of music, they essentially were from the hood. They were from the street.
Right.
The way they
Right.
mixed in their understanding and their knowledge of music back then.
Right. And when you think of a lot of, a lot of dance music, a lot of the rhythms do originate from the street. And you have hip hop today, you have rap, which is, I mean, and even salsa music. When it comes to getting into salsa, salsa is the music of the streets of Puerto Rico and the Latin community. So it's all, dance music has its core, Felipe, in the streets. Dance music is definitely a street vibration. So getting back to your question, I was part of Eddie Rivera's record pool, and Dennis Rivera, Eddie's brother, Jamie Rivera, Eddie's brother, they helped run the pool with Eddie. And I was helping in the same way that I try to help you out with a lot of these interviews, Felipe. I wanted to help the pool advance, move on, get things going. I remember Eddie asked me to do a party for Beverly Johnson, who was having an event at the record pool showcasing her new record. And I DJ'd that party, and I felt very good about that because I was helping the pool advance with that.
Right.
So at some point, with all of the disco stuff going on with Ray Caviano at TK Records and Henry Stone, leading the way with that. And I remember Kenny Friedman at Casablanca.
Oh man, what a great guy!
What a great person he was! What a really spirited nice guy. Well, Casablanca to me and TK Records were leading the field with the disco boom. All of the other labels were involved, but I think Casablanca and TK were really running the show, running the charts, running the sales. And
putting out, if I may add, putting out record covers. There were artwork. There were the artwork. They were so stunning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was looking at all of the Village People, just the Village People artwork online before I came on for this interview. I can't believe how many art covers and pictures there are. So, and that's just Village People. I mean, you had DC LaRue, you had so many, you had Donna
Summer, yeah.
You had a lot of artists. So you can imagine the artwork involved with all of these artists. Anyway, getting back, Vanguard Records wanted to jump on the bandwagon with the disco movement. Now, that Vanguard Records initially was a classical and jazz label.
That's right.
That's how they built their.
That's why the name. I was like trying to think, were they part of Arista Records or what? And but they were. That's it. They
were classical and jazz. Not relating, no connection to disco or dance whatsoever. Not to mention that the owners of the label, Maynard Solomon, Seymour Solomon, they were already in their 70s, late 80s, running the classical and jazz and country part of Vanguard. And in comes disco, and they have no clue. It's like
what is this music?
Exactly. And actually a little fearing it because
it was a sort of it sort of had a dangerous beat to it, a feeling of like, oh, do I want to dip my toe in there? But once you did, you were hooked.
I totally agree.
You couldn't stop dancing. Like you made it like your life. Like you had to dance. You had to go out.
And it's a great thing. It brought people out. It brought different dance moves into the arena. It brought more fashion. There was a highly spirited environment tied into disco that made it what it was. And it
was inclusive. There were so many, everyone was in there together in the clubs.
Right, right. There was well, I mean, when you think about it, Felipe, you could go clubbing. It doesn't matter whether you were in San Francisco or you're in New York City. You can go clubbing 24 hours a day if you wanted to, 7 days a week. That's how many clubs.
And we could, and we did.
It was nonstop. You couldn't get enough of going out. People couldn't wait to get out of work if they were, people couldn't wait for the weekends to go clubbing. It was, the radio had its format of what it called dance music, and the clubs were thriving with a different underground pulse that brought people to that environment to check out the curiosity of what this new music was all about,
which is what led radio to disco.
Yeah, exactly.
They weren't officially originally, they weren't on the bandwagon per se of this new form of this underground, music, and with all the DJs, they were actually pushing the singles that many labels were actually getting rid of. You guys were playing it in the clubs. People wanted it. They would go out and buy it, and then it bypassed the radio station and shot up the charts.
That's correct. So that's correct. And so there was a big power movement with the clubs. Now, keep in mind, Felipe, these are what we're talking about right here is it's very sensitive. And what I mean by that, because I work with a record company at Vanguard Records, and I understand that when you work with a record company, your goal is to create sales. You want to sell records, and your job is to get records on the radio, because believe it or not, there is more power in numbers through radio play as compared to getting records played in the clubs.
Right.
Now, a lot of people will look at that, what I just said, and say, wait a minute. I know records that have been broken in the clubs. I know clubs that are big clubs that play records that the radio don't play. True, but more people listen. There's bigger numbers in getting a collaborated number of radio stations playing a record than getting a number of clubs playing the records. So you have more potential for sales with airplay, even though some of the stuff that the club people hear on the radio is not to their liking, and vice versa. Radio doesn't like a lot of stuff that's in the clubs because it's not.
You had an extensive background in radio, and more importantly with alternative rock at WCCR on AM radio.
That's correct.
AM before FM.
That's correct. You're doing your homework today, Felipe.
Trying. There's a lot on you, my friend. There's a lot of
yes. I went to City College in New York. I also knew Russell Simmons, who produced Run DMC. He was part of the college. I got to meet him. And I became music director of the City College radio station, like you mentioned, WCCR AM radio. And it was a progressive format. I played a lot of alternative music that comes out of the UK, the stuff that you heard out of the 80s, the dance rock stuff, the Tears for Fears, Duran Duran, that kind of stuff, that's the ska stuff that comes out of UK, reggae, so that was, and I got an award for,
I believe you got from Billboard, right?
No, it wasn't from Billboard. It was from the Shure record pool in the Bronx. Bobby Davis presented me with that award because of my progressive format. So getting back to everything, all of these points helped shape my mind. When I went into a recording studio, I thought of all of these things. I thought of the clubs. I thought of the radio stations. I really perceived an artist. And what I mean by that, you know, you hear, for example, you hear Victor Willis when he sings on The Village People. You hear DC LaRue when he sings. There's something about the vocal quality of an artist that I perceive. In other words, I listen to an artist and I want to make sure that that artist is well absorbed when he or she sings. If we need a little bit more harmonies on the hook to bring out that vocal artist a little bit more identity with more harmonies, let's do that. Let's bring out that vocal quality. You know, so in other words, I'm trying to connect to the audiences.
I used to have that. I learned that process with the late Jacques Morali. He would say we would do a pass, a 5-part harmony, sometimes 3/5. Then he would say, we double. We were like, what? Okay, we triple. And like, you know, it was hard to really then, how do you match that huge sound of voices live on stage?
But you know, Felipe, it's a very good point. And you're saying to yourself, while you're in the middle of dealing with Jacques, why is he quote unquote
insanity
punishing us? Why?
Because like you, he wanted to hear that sound in a club like you would hear it on the radio, and that it's front and center and present.
Exactly.
He didn't want the vocals buried in the music.
Right.
It had to have a wall so you could touch it.
And you've heard records, Felipe, where the vocals are so low that you can't really hear them.
And I don't like fading on vocals when mixing. If you're ending a song, please don't fade out on a vocal. I hate it.
That's true. That's true. That's another element too. So the whole idea is that you have an artist on this record or on the LP, and how do you make this artist connect more with the audience that she or he is trying to connect to? And these are the little things that you do. You work on doubling the vocals. You work on, you know, there are ad libs that artists do. For example, you know, the Beatles go, "She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah." Well, the yeah, yeah, yeah are not lyrics; they're ad libs, and they add a little bit of emotion that connects to the audience, and makes you a little bit more connected. So there are things that you do in a record to connect even more so spiritually with the audience. You know, today you look at a lot of these producers and, you know, they're coming out all over the place. It's a global competition with dance music, and the productions are not, I would say,
but dance music has broken up into various categories.
Oh, absolutely.
There's alternative dance, there's pop dance. So, you know, at least that it's almost like finding the needle. Where do you want to put your needle at, and where and what station? So you have that kind of rich tapestry of various forms, just like in country and just like in R&B, and also hip hop and rap. You worked with Vanguard with a few artists that you actually charted records with.
Sure.
Fonda Rae.
Sure.
Over
Like a Fat Rat.
Over Like a Fat. Yes.
You want to hear something? You want to hear something? Carol Williams. I work with Carol Williams too, and I love Carol. She's a sweetheart.
She was on the show through you. Yes, she was beautiful.
I just love her, you know. But you know, Over Like a Fat Rat was a first choice option for Carol Williams to sing. She didn't like it.
And I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
She was not too enthused by the record, and we gave it to Fonda.
So what was it? Can't Get Away From Your Love? Or what was that the one that she recorded? Or Can't
That's
Get
the
Away From
one.
Your Love?
That's the
That's the
one that she
one.
did. Yeah.
And then reached 38, top 30 in the US
Yes.
charts
Yes.
and the club charts as well.
That's
And
correct.
R&B and played R&B on radio as well. So you had various charts with Carol,
Right.
which right there tells you crossover artists.
Exactly. And we had a lot of fun, and I have a little story about that Carol Williams record, Can't Get Away From Your Love, which was produced by Daryl Payne, good friend of mine also. Once the record was peaking on the dance charts and R&B charts and then coming down, it happens to every record. No,
right. Sure.
This is the nature of the business. So we had a little get together at Vanguard Records. The owner, Maynard Solomon, 80 years old. The promotional staff, Tom Gray, I forget the other R&B promoter, Ray Smith. Both of them rest in peace. They're gone today. But we had a discussion about Can't Get Away on a Tuesday afternoon. And we decided.
You know that for a fact that it was a Tuesday afternoon.
I remember it was Tuesday.
Oh my God! Yes. I know that you said it, then you believe it, because I can't do stuff like that.
Well, I can remember.
It was a Tuesday.
I mean, that's how my mind is. Anyway, getting back, we decided to go back into the studio, Vanguard Studios, which was a block away from the record company on 23rd Street in Manhattan. And we decided to do another version of Can't Get Away From Your Love, a dub version strictly for the clubs.
Okay.
What was the logic of doing that? The record is already out. It's
right on radio, various charts.
Why do you want to do that? The logic is if we do another version and just give it to the record pools, 4,000 copies nationally to all of these record pools, and put it on a 10-inch record. And most of the records were 12 inches.
Was that the acetate? Was that the acetate, the 10-inch?
Well, there wasn't an initial acetate, but we did service 10-inch vinyl
10-inch
records.
Vinyl, okay.
That came from the acetate.
White label, right?
That's correct.
Just with the name Vanguard and the name of the song and the artist. That's it.
That's correct. And we had Carol talk for about 30 seconds, introducing this new version, thanking all of the Metro DJs for playing Can't Get Away. So that became more of a novelty, more of a hook to get the DJs to listen to the record. And, what happened was the record was already a hit. This is a new version. So the club started playing the original version with the new version back to back, creating this new version. And people were going to the stores asking for this new version of Can't Get Away, and they couldn't get it. They couldn't buy it. It was only available on 10-inch for the clubs. But here's the clincher, Felipe. The sales and radio play went back up. Because
it gave it a bump. It bumped it up to the charts again. Now I remember, while you're saying this, I was thinking that I now remember that Jacques Morali, the late producer of the Village People, he was, when the single would come out, say it was In the Navy or Macho Man or whatever, and then he would go, and he would ask me to go to the clubs with him, and he would hand the acetate or a record to the DJ. So that he can mix it, because he wanted to see what the reaction was on the dance floor. Right. And then when he would feel that reaction or that vibe, or would sense that the crowd's not really, yelling or whatever, he would take the record back, say thank you. He would leave. He would go straight back to Sigma Sounds. He would go back straight to Sigma Sound and start mixing it again. So he got the record right. That's interesting that I remembered that just now.
Very interesting, and a very powerful tool, because a lot of the record companies I know that Ray Caviano and TK Records, they tested a lot of records in the clubs. A lot of labels did that. You know, when I was a DJ at the Ipanema on 52nd Street, you know, 2 blocks away from Studio 54.
That was a big club back in the day.
Yes, yes, very festive. We had a lot of the clientele from studio come into the club and mixed with our environment. Well, a lot of the record companies were coming in with acetates and asking me to play a lot of their records, and I would. So that's how I became a Billboard reporting DJ, because I was playing a lot of new stuff. I love playing new records. It's a very sensitive thing to do that, because a lot of the audiences, if they're not familiar with the song, they may be tempted to clear the floor.
Right.
But
yeah.
if you have a way of doing it, conditioning your crowd
And keeping them there.
right, that's the thing.
Because
Knowing
the wrong mix, you can clear it. I've heard it from Robbie Leslie, Nick Ciano. The wrong mix could clear a dance floor.
absolutely. And you learn from that. As a DJ,
Right.
you learn from clearing the floor how not to clear the floor. You know, it takes time, but it's part of the process of becoming what I would call professional at what you do. You know, so it was a lot of fun, Felipe.
You had quite a bunch of hits, not just the one with Carol. You also had with Dance to the Music, Junior Byron. I
Yes.
know that song.
Yes.
I remember the song. A lot of people don't, but then again, that was because it was to, you know, these some of these songs were now re-released again. There's Junior Byron, End Games, Rainbow Brown, Till You Surrender,
Yes.
Ghost by the Comatines.
Yes.
There were a lot of hits that Vanguard put out while you were under their helm working with them.
That's correct. And, you know, I particularly was very intrigued, Felipe, with reggae type of artists, not reggae music. And I like reggae music. I listen to that to get a different perspective, because as a music person, I have to be open to everything.
Sure.
Understand what I'm doing with a particular project. The more I understand of all the types of music that are out there, the better I am to fine tune what I'm trying to do in the studio. Anyway, I was always intrigued by the reggae type of vocal. You know, Gwen Guthrie is a reggae artist that sang that record, Should Have Been You, an R&B record, but she's a reggae singer.
Oh, I didn't know that. See? Okay, Gwen Guthrie. That's good to know.
Eddie Grant, Walking on Sunshine, reggae singer, R&B record. Okay.
All right.
Okay. And I was involved in that record, in that mix of that record for Columbia Records. And Junior Byron, we decided to license this record from Canada, and I liked his vocal. He's got a reggae type of a vocal, even though the record is a disco type of a record. So I always felt that looking for a vocal that's a little bit left of center can bring a little bit more of a spotlight
to the song.
And
we're gonna take our first break. And when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with the amazing, the incomparable Ray Pinky Velasquez. You're listening to us on Spotify live with the video of the show, and also listening to us, the audio portion, on Anchor FM. We'll be right back. And we're back with the Disco Chronicles and Beyond with our special guest today, Ray Pinky Velasquez. Ray, so now that you're taking vocalists that are not disco artists, but left of center, that are some are reggae artists, some are not, and you're putting them in disco music. Like, who thinks like that? Like, I would never in my 100 years thought that Byron or Gwen were first and foremost reggae singers, and then they were doing disco. That's just beautiful. That's just
Well, when
beautiful.
when you think about it, Felipe, Island Records had a big catalog of reggae artists. Now, you and I both know that reggae has had a difficult platform here in the States trying to get airplay, because a lot of the reggae music is very political. When you think of Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, there's a lot of political uh, um, images, a lot of political words.
Well, their phrases and their verses. I
Yeah,
mean, but they're storytellers too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but radio has had, when you think of salsa music, Latin music has had barriers to penetrate in this country when it comes to radio. Why is that?
Now we hear English songs where the verses are in English, and then there's I'll give you a perfect example, Despacito, with Justin Bieber singing the first verse all in English, and Luis Fonte, what's his name? Luis Fonte from Despacito. Yeah, he was singing it in Spanish. So the radio suddenly has a English song, which became a huge hit.
It's obvious that we live in a country where the Hispanic population is booming. People are coming in from Mexico, from Ecuador. I mean, it's a mixture of Spanish people coming in. Spanish is the second language in this country, and there's
in the world, Spanish is spoken as much as English in the world.
So if you're an artist, think about it. If you're an artist, how do you reach out to that large segment, knowing that still radio is a little holding back, with a lot of this stuff? And you have to be creative. You have to use the format of what's already there on radio, and then camouflage it with some Spanish riffs or language, but make sure that the rest of the record is still centered to the American population that's out there. But we're moving in a world right now where there's more demand for the bilingual stuff, and artists are experimenting with that. The same thing with reggae. I mean, rock records are UB40, reggae, so
Rihanna's helped a lot bringing that form of style of music to the forefront. She dips in a lot in reggae in her music as well. She brings in influences to her music because she's from that part of the world.
Right. Very true. And since the atmosphere out there with youth having a difficult time graduating, going to school and getting a degree, it's becoming more and more difficult, a little more challenging for the youth in this country to find an angle of success. Music is inviting everyone to give it a try and see what your talents are. And with that, you have more mixture of music presenting itself globally. And
I just found out recently and tapped into Gimme Gimme Disco, which is an event of DJs that travel all over the country. And the idea was pitched. They said, sure, come on in the middle of the night and just appear and bring us a 20-30 minute set of your greatest hits with the group and new stuff and some disco classics. I tapped into that, and now I have another show coming up in the Brooklyn Bowl in Brooklyn this Friday night at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm when was the last time I played at 1 o'clock in the morning? I'm like 8 p.m. Okay, showtime. So I'll gear. But what I realize is that this new generation of Gen Zs and millennials are in love with disco. and they're in love with ABBA. They're in love with all these songs, and they sing these songs like their life depends on it. And I've never seen anything like it, but they're loving it, and I'm loving it. So it's for the moment, I'm having some fun with this situation. But the disco is still around. Hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, it's still there. And the reason being is that a lot of it's very melodic. You know, there's a lot of melody in disco.
A lot of it is being sampled as well.
That's true. And melody has its way of communicating to the human spirit. Like I mentioned before, when we started the show today, Felipe, I grew up listening to melody, WABC radio, the Stones, the Beatles.
We were listening to the same type of music. Yeah.
Melody, a lot of melody, a lot of, and to me, if a good song, if it's gonna stand the test of time, it's gotta have a melody. It's gotta have a melody. So and disco, a lot of disco music has melody, and kids love melody. Like you mentioned, they're singing ABBA, melodic, very melodic music. So I can understand that.
Look, one song that I can just say call out that is like still plays, and now I hear it even more. Is YMCA. Like that song. Someone told me getting my hair cut. Some guy interrupted.
YMCA in the Navy too.
No, but I hear YMCA more than ever. And this guy interrupted the girl that was cutting my hair, and she said, "No, your appointment's tomorrow." He looks up and through the mirror at the mirror, and I look up because I was like playing with my phone, and he looks at me and he says, "Hey, I know who you are." And I thought I kind of smiled. He said, "Your father's in the Village People." I looked at my girl and I said, "You tell him." So that I took as a high compliment, as he could not believe it that it's actually the real dude. But again, music does that. Music, if it's a great song, it will last forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of the Village People stuff, 20, 30 years from now, will be still hovering around the airwaves, just like Donna Summer. But
the classics as well. The Devil's Gun. You have Woman by Barabbas. Things that many of the DJs Mancuso introduced to New York. Oh, not on radio, but in the clubs. Today, Soul Makossa. That plays, and you can remember where you were when the day you heard it.
Absolutely.
Like just like that, it throws you back.
Right. So there are disco records that when you hear them, puts you right back, for many people, into a club, into an environment, and that does something for the human spirit. When you hear a song, an old song, you're right back in that day and time with that song. And there's an emotional connection that's beyond words.
Yeah.
That happens. And that's the power of a good melody, and a good song will always stand the test of time. And that's where I am in my thinking about music. It doesn't matter if I'm playing house music. I understand the whole house movement. I understand the competitiveness with the DJs that are out there, but it
wasn't like that during our days. It wasn't like that. All the DJs supported each other, Yeah. And the people that you worked with, like Mark S. Berry, like you guys, he was with Vanguard with you. You guys put out a bunch of music together.
Absolutely.
And he said he'll go back to work with you in the studio any day. You also worked with Steve Thompson, also spoke to Ray Caviano from RFC Records.
RFC.
So you went through it all. All the motions. You went up and you sideways. You put out some great music. You've had a successfully good life, and doing music. And where are you now? What comes now? What's next for Ray Pinky Velasquez?
I started a company called Pinky Pack Productions. I don't know if you can. This is my logo.
That's the logo. Okay. Yes, I've seen it. Yes.
And
Pinky Pack.
Pinky Pack Productions. And what I'm trying to do with Pinky Pack Productions is we're scanning the globe, looking for artists that we can produce and either produce them for the label that they have, that they're on, or find a label for them if they don't have a label. There's a lot of talent out there. I mean, I remember, Felipe, when I was part of the record pool, how many records I would get weekly at the pool. And, you know, not all of the records went and were played in the clubs or were reported to Billboard. You know, I was very choosy about the records that I wanted to play because obviously I had a club that had a certain clientele, Latinos, and I had to find records that would fit the club, and I would report records to Billboard accordingly. But getting back, there's a lot of artists that need help with their music. So with Pinky Pack Productions, we are trying to produce artists, shop them, or if they're already signed to the label, produce their music, make it a little bit more acceptable to not just the dance floor, but to the radio, for the downloads, for the listening audience.
Right, to have it, let it have like a global ear, like an earworm kind of sensibility, so that when they hear it, it stays with them.
And at the same time, Felipe, there's a lot of old records that could be redone today.
Oh my God, tell me about it.
But there's a lot of great records that
there are some that are I love, but I don't know that I could ever even touch it. Risky Changes. I love that song.
Great song.
But that's a classic in itself, and sometimes it's best to leave it alone.
Well, that's true too. It gets to a point that you should not, quote unquote, destroy a record, chop it up just to make it a little bit more.
One thing to sing it's one thing to sing karaoke and with your friends, but it's another thing to record the song. And if you're not going to make it better, don't do it at all.
And that's a tough challenge.
That's a tough challenge.
Yes, it is.
I've successfully tapped him again because of the producer that I was with. I did a really kick-ass version of one of my favorite singers from back then, Peter Brown.
Oh my God.
And so I redid Going Back to My Roots.
Very good.
And that actually, to my surprise, was nominated by the Native American Music Awards, and they didn't have a best dance category, and they said, we like it, we're going to create the best dance category, because in Native, like in the Native NAMI Awards, they have best hip hop, best folk, best country, Native country, so best dance single. And I said, okay, it's your award show, do what you will. And it won. The voting went through the roof. They won the 2018 Best Dance category of the year for that. I was actually surprised, but it was because of the influence of Native instruments that I brought into the structure of the song. So rather than mess it up, embellished it more, and with a good producer, you're lucky enough to come across with something interesting.
And I'm pretty sure, Felipe, before you put the record together, there was a lot of contemplating on how you want to do this record.
The vocal attack, the arrangement, right.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the target audience? Who are you trying to get? And I'm pretty sure it was beyond the dance floor, and that's what I'm trying to preach to a lot of these newcomers, that these DJs, they all compete with each other for the dance floor superiority. And basically that comes down to rhythm tracks and bass line. But when you really want to connect and get numbers on your project, you got to think melody. You got to think song, and then put those
But
elements.
all of this comes in through the mixing of whoever the DJ or the remixer or the producer is. Now, I know a lot of people are going to hear me say this on the Disco Chronicles, but when I look at a DJ mixing two laptops, to me, that's not what the art form was.
No.
I'm old school, and to see someone mixing from two turntables with earphone, like Nicky Siena, who had three turntables.
Right.
To me, that was mastery at its best, with none other than Larry Levan or Frankie Knuckles.
Right.
That to me, Jelly Bean mixing hardcore on vinyl.
Right.
Now today, anyone can be a DJ.
Well, yeah.
But they mix with their Tascam and their CD mixer with their laptop, and they scroll through their songs, and they know, at least they have a melodic structure in their mind of what goes with what.
Right.
But that, to me, it looks a little, well, okay, that's still new to me.
Yeah, it's still a little bland. It's not. It lacks a little.
That's why a lot of the hip hop artists, they have a DJ scratching records behind them, because they want that live scratch, that nice element to give it more cojones.
More impact.
More impact. Yes.
Yeah. So I agree. A lot of the DJs today, with the technology, they're able to lock those beats per minute right on top of each other perfectly. Back in the day, it was done without the technology, by ear and hand
and touch and feel.
And critically, the DJs knew how to lead their audience in a journey with their music melodically. Today, it's no journey. It's just locking the beats per minute, and there's a lack of meaning of what an evening of dance music is all about. It's totally different. Now,
well, if the DJ is good and a couple of cocktails that just soothe me right out, I'll dance all night long. If the music is good, it's good, it keeps me there and keeps me intrigued, then I will stay and I will dance all night long. So I'm going to thank you for, first of all, the amazing guest that you introduced me to, and Estella, my associate producer, Steve Thompson. Wow, I had to have him back on another show because I didn't get through half of the things that he was talking about. Then, of course, Mark S. Berry. In every conversation with everyone, Ray Caviano, everyone was just always bringing Pinky. So where did Pinky again? Where did that come from?
Pinky, in the third grade, Felipe.
This is I thought it came from like the music side of the industry.
No, that's my nickname. I was born Ramon Joseph, and in the third grade, the tallest guy in the class, Eric Arzola, started calling me Pinky because I was the shortest guy in the class, and he would come to my house at the end of the day because I would help a lot of the classmates with their homework. I was very smart in school, and at home in front of my parents, they would call me Pinky, and my mother started calling me Pinky, and
well, they ended up in the business. It was like Ray Pinky, and everyone knew who it was. So again, thank you for bringing us guests for season 2. We're now in season 3. So I want to thank you because this took so long to get it on the calendar, and then things always come up. Things, or there are technical difficulties, which I think we had you twice. We were both on it. One time it was me, and then another time it was you. So we had to reschedule.
But persistence.
Yes,
made it right, and that's
patience. So I want to thank you, my friend. Be well. Happy spring. Please keep me informed and on top of what you're working on, so that we can promote it on the show. I want to
Okay.
thank our guest, Ray Pinky Velasquez. He's somewhere up in where's the Utica
Planet Utica.
planet? Planet Utica. That's up in the tundra. That's up there. I want to thank him for being on our show today. And I want to thank you all. Thank you very much for listening. We really, really appreciate it and full of gratitude and sincerity. We love that you tune in. And we always have a comment, a question that you can comment on. So just check out for it. It'll be posted along with the show. Thank you again for listening and watching to the Disco Chronicles and Beyond on Spotify.com and on Anchor FM and on its own YouTube channel. Thank you again. Catch you, my friend.
Best wishes always to you and Estella.
Thank you.
You're welcome.